All right, let's get started. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining tonight. Really appreciate it. So tonight, I'll start off by doing a quick intro of Kettle. And for those of you who don't know who Kettle is, it'll be a good kind of understanding of what we do at Kettle. So, who is Kettle? So, Kettle is a platform built for first time buyers to help you research, find, finance, and complete on your home purchase. Now, we were started back in 2020 based on the frustration of mine and my co founder, Alex, when we tried to buy our first houses back in the day. And, this frustration, led us to figure out kind of, what we needed to do in order to do that, but also knowing that there was a better opportunity to make it a better experience for first time buyers. So Kettle is completely free for all of our users. And now we've also partnered with a bunch of great service providers to help you complete your purchase. And because of this, we're able to save you a bunch of money. So, things like being able to save on your mortgage fees. So that's fantastic. Now, what do we do specifically? Well, we start at the very beginning. We can help you learn about the property buying process. We help you check your affordability, and we can use our tools to kind of help you do scenario analysis. Let's say you're going to get a raise in the next couple months. What would that look like? Or if you saved a little bit more for your deposit. We can then help you find a property. So we have a curated property search tool, which uses your affordability and then helps to dive deeper and find properties that are good for you. In addition to that, once you have found a property, we can help you get a little bit more informed about it. So we are able to provide great detailed reports for both the areas and the properties themselves. And that, as I mentioned before, providing you with connections like mortgage brokers who are not charging fees. So that saves you up to £500. And then in addition to that, we also connect you with other vetted service suppliers like conveyancers, surveyors, insurance. Now, a little bit about myself. My name is Trevor. I am the co-founder here at Kettle, and I'll be tonight's host. As you can tell, I have a funny accent. I'm originally from Canada, but I've been living in the UK for the last 10 years. My background is actually building property technology companies, and have done so before in the letting space. So Kettle is my second baby. And I do live in London now, but I have dreams of moving to the Cornish coast to follow my surfing dream. So a little bit about me, but let's get started. So the buying journey. And what we'll be talking about tonight is sort of a high level view of the entire buying process. And what we'll go over is essentially the high level information that you'll need to know over the next kind of hour that will give you a good view of kind of what the process looks like, walking you from sort of end to end, what we would call dreams to keys. So if you have any questions, what we'll do is we'll hold them till the end. And if you would like to put them into the chat there, we can go through a couple of those at the end. In addition to that, we also offer one-to-one guidance when it comes to first-time buyers. So if you have any questions whatsoever, you can also book a one-to-one session to get some guidance from one of our Kettle guides who can help you along the way. So let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is savings. Obviously, deposits are a big thing and something that we need to consider when we are thinking about buying our first house. The next thing is to think about credit building and credit scores. What do they mean? How do they impact your finances? How are they going to impact you when you are looking for your mortgage? Then it's moving on to affordability. And this is actually one of the biggest questions that we get from our users is, I've saved some money from a deposit, be it over time or through gifting. What is my total affordability? And this is actually a big thing that we get asked quite a bit. The next steps is chatting more about the mortgage and sort of alternative finances. The traditional mortgage is no longer the only option available for first-time buyers. There's actually quite a few new options, which we'll briefly touch on this evening and allow you to explore in future. And then from there, we'll also be talking about the property search. And obviously, it is a process that's iterative, and finding the right property for you, can take a week or two, but it can take a couple months. So being patient with that is always important. Then we'll move on to negotiations and offers. chat a bit about conveyancing and what you need to know and sort of the major steps there, surveys, home and contents insurance, and then finally moving. So overall, how long will this process take? Well, roughly, the question is how long a piece of string? Well, it depends on sort of your savings and education component. That can take anywhere between 12 and multiple years. The search component generally takes between 1 and 3 months, depending on how actively you are searching. And then completion, right now in the UK, average completion rates are between 18 and 20 weeks. Historically, they've been closer to more 14 to 16, and that's primarily due to the stamp duty holiday that has come to an end at the end of June. So we're hoping to see those come down. All right, let's jump right into it. So we'll do a quick poll to keep things sort of active and not just me chatting away. So the quick poll is about your deposit. So we'll launch that there, and we'll see what kind of answers we get. We'll put that up for a couple seconds. A couple more seconds. Fantastic. So it looks like a lot of people have, done a lot of savings already, if not already completed. So this is fantastic. So we'll breeze through this deposit component as it won't be as relevant to some of the people on the call, but we are recording this, so it will be useful to some people in the future. So I guess the question is like, how do you save your deposit? Well, it's all about paying yourself first. So making sure that you're putting aside savings every month when you're getting paid, and making sure that you're living by your bank account, taking away those savings and putting it away into a savings account or a lifetime ISA, which we'll get to in a second. The next thing is using a lifetime ISA, or if you already have a help to buy ISA, which is no longer available if you haven't already set it up. These are great ways to help encourage your savings. In addition to that, there's also being gifted a deposit, which is, no, not everybody has that option, but if you do, that's also a great way to get some money for your deposit. There are special requirements. So if you are getting gifted a deposit, make sure you know what it is that you need to do in order to have your deposit pass the anti-money laundering checks that your mortgage broker and conveyancer will have you go through. So we can help you with that. We also have a blog written about that, so check that out. In addition to that, you can also do things like buying with somebody else. So you can buy with a family member, you can buy with a friend. There are joint mortgages, and there are also other tools which we'll get to in terms of alternative finance, which are helping this. Now, what you can't do is you can't borrow your deposit from another lender. So you can't take out a short-term loan from somebody else, because your lender will see this and they will not lend to you. This is something that will come up as a red flag for them. So we'll dive into a little bit of the lifetime ISA just quickly. There is a lot of information out there, but the lifetime ISA is a very useful tool for anybody who is currently saving for their first home. Keep in mind that you can save up to £4,000 per year and get an extra £1,000 bonus. So 25% of the total savings, up to £4,000 per year. But there are things to look out for. So you can only buy a house up to a max value of £450,000, which covers most people. The average house in the UK is £255,000 this year. But the other thing you need to consider is you need to use this money that you're saving in the lifetime ISA only for your first time home purchase, or else you'll be penalized for it. So that's something to consider. So if you are considering potentially buying or doing something else, you should think about using this. You can also speak to your qualified financial advisor as somebody to give you more guidance and advice on this. So make sure you always speak to a qualified financial advisor before you're making any sort of investment decisions. In addition to that, help to buy for the people who have it available. You can see it on the right. The slight differences are the max bonus that you can get is total $3,000 versus an annual bonus of 1,000 or up to 1,000. There's also differences in the max house prices. And as I mentioned, it is closed to new buyers, and you must use your bonus by 2030. So something to consider. So now we're going to do another poll of credit. So how often do you check your credit report, or excuse me, credit score? Very good. Okay, great. So it looks like over half is checking on a monthly basis. That is definitely what we would recommend. It's very important to continually check your credit score. So what is your credit score? It's essentially a snapshot of how you've managed your money in the past. Now, who provides it? There are three main credit referencing agencies in the UK: Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. Now, they all have slightly different scoring mechanisms, but essentially the same idea. What they've done is they look at your credit report, which is essentially a list of things that have pinged your credit. So it could be a credit card, it could be a loan, it could be your a car that you've recently bought on credit, and these things all sort of stack up. And what Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion are trying to do is they're trying to make that into a digestible format. So what they do is they create these numbers and they give it a good and excellent score, but it goes all the way down to poor. Now, if you are looking to buy a house in the very near future, we always recommend to aim for at least a good score, if not excellent. Now, there are situations where you might not have that great of a score, but it could be because you don't have credit. We can jump into that in a second. So why does it matter? So lenders use your credit score as a way for them to make a decision. So it's one of the four main components that they put into their analysis to understand, how credit worthy you are and how you've managed your money in the past. Now, it's important to know that it's all about sort of credit responsibility. And what they'll be looking for is not necessarily if you have credit or if you don't have credit, but how you've managed it in the past. So we talked about how often you should check your credit report. So we would recommend that you check your credit report at least once a month, though, if you're doing it on a quarterly basis, that's a good habit to get into. In addition to this, you should also check not just your score, but your actual credit report and see if there's any transactions on there that you don't recognize. So a big thing is potentially some of the fraud transactions that you're seeing these days in e-commerce. And the more that people are using credit cards and stuff like that, it's very important to keep tabs on your credit report, because if you're not aware that something's on there, it can deplete your credit score quite quickly, and it takes quite a while for you to get your credit back up. Now, you can either sign up directly with any of the three providers we mentioned. You can also work with somebody like Credit Club. So Credit Club's a great tool that will send you a free credit score review every month, and they've partnered with Experian. So it's quite useful. You get an email, and it's something that will keep you sort of looking at your credit score even without you having to do much. Now, we got a couple things here that we can talk about in terms of what credit agencies are looking out for, and things like outstanding debts. The big thing actually is being registered to vote. So if you're not registered to vote, you should definitely go and do that. Making sure that you're not missing payments or going over your limits, and then also credit seekers. So somebody who is out there requesting multiple credit options and availability over a period of time, a short period of time. So just be conscious of the amount of credit that you're requesting. Some tips to improve your credit. Again, don't miss a payment. Make sure you're paying down your debts. Make sure you're settling any of your county court judgments or credit defaults. Make sure that you're not applying for any new credit within 6 to 12 months of your application for your loan. For your mortgage. And don't use your overdraft when you're in order to sort of push that up. And the other thing is we don't recommend using Klarna either. Those are things that can sometimes can challenge your credit as well. And then finally, if you don't have credit, currently living at home, you might not have any bills on your names. What we recommend is, moving your phone bill from a monthly pay-as-you-go to, getting a monthly contract. Making sure that you're able to potentially get a small credit card to pay for groceries, but then at the same time getting direct debit and connecting that so you don't forget to pay. And then, as mentioned before, the electoral roll. So, as I said before, credit scores go down very quickly, but it takes them a while to come back up. So good credit responsibility is very important whenever you are thinking about building your credit. Cool. So we'll move on to financing. So this is a big question that a lot of people have whenever we are speaking with Kettel users. And it's all about sort of, okay, what can I get for my mortgage? Now, let's step back for a second. We'll talk about mortgages in general. So obviously mortgages are the most common way that people finance their homes. There's a couple ways to do it. The repayment mortgage is the standard mortgage that most people have. And the way that mortgages work is it is a chunk of money that is apportioned to the purchase of your house, but it is not the full value. So as of right now, the most amount that you can get for a mortgage is 95% of the total value of the property, which means that you're putting down a 5% deposit. So you have to save at least 5% of the value of the home. Now, that doesn't include the value that you need to save for your conveyancing, for your survey, for stamp duty. That's an additional value. So keep that in mind. So it's not just your deposit that you need to save for, it's the other fees or what we call closing fees that you need to save for as well. Mortgages come in all shapes and sizes. Generally, the terms are 20 to 35 years, but they can be variable, they can be fixed, they can be a 2-year, a 3-year, a 5-year. Now, this is where a qualified mortgage broker is extremely important, and we definitely always recommend working with a qualified broker. They are super helpful because they're going to be able to give you whole of market view, and they are also going to be able to sort of work with you and understand sort of your current situation, but also sort of what you might come into in the next couple of years. And they'll talk to you about sort of what options are best for you. So what we can do at Kettel, we actually work with a couple mortgage advisors that do not charge a fee. So if you are ever looking for a mortgage provider, you can always get that checked out on Kettel. Now, moving on to mortgages, mortgages in principle. So what we call as a MIP, also known as a decision in principle or an agreement in principle. We also call them pre-approvals. And essentially what it is you're providing a certain set of information to the mortgage advisor, things like your income, your deposit, what your monthly outgoings are, if you have any additional debts. And they take that information and they put it into their systems and they find a lender who is willing to provide you a certain value for your mortgage. Now, what this does is it provides you a lot more clarity, and it's very useful because once you understand what you'll be able to borrow, then you'll understand sort of what types of properties you should be looking at. And this is a big driver. Now, where a lot of people get tripped up in this is understanding their affordability. So the general affordability, and we'll get to in a minute, is something that's not really sort of talked about too much. Now, the other benefit of having a mortgage in principle is that it shows to the estate agent and to the buyer that you are a serious buyer. Excuse me, to the seller that you're a serious buyer. And this is really important because in a competitive market, if you are going against other people who are also out there who have similar sort of backgrounds and they have mortgages in principle, that kind of puts you behind the 8 ball in terms of being able to get a competitive offer into the seller. And then finally, once you have a mortgage in principle, it speeds up the process once your offer is accepted. So it's one less thing that you have to do then. Now, when should you get one? Anytime that you are looking to seriously buy your property, you should get a mortgage in principle. Now, they are available for roughly 90 to 120 in terms of days. Now, if you get one and it expires, that's not a problem. You can always get another one. Now, Most of the mortgage and principals will not put a hard print on your credit report, but it's best to ask your mortgage advisor if that's the case based on the lender. There are very few lenders who do, and your mortgage advisor will let you know if that is the case. So, what are lenders looking for? Well, that is a very good question. And it really does depend based on the lender. Now, there are four main criteria that lenders look at when they are considering your application for a mortgage. First of all, is affordability. So, as I mentioned before, affordability is actually one of the biggest questions that users have when coming on Kettle. Now, we have a tool on Kettle that you can use to put in your information, including your salary, your deposit, any outgoing stuff like that, and it'll give you a good view of what you are able to afford. Now, generally, the rule of thumb is 4.5 times. Now, it depends on your circumstances, but there are lenders who will go up to 5.5 times. Now, this is where a qualified mortgage broker looking at whole of market will have a good view on sort of how they can maximize that affordability for you and making sure that the payments are right for you. The next step is deposit. As mentioned, the minimum deposit you can have right now is 5%. The more you save for your deposit, so moving from 5 to 10, 10 to 15, the better the interest rate you usually get. So the more you save, the better interest rate. The better interest rate you get, the more you'll save on the total value of the mortgage over the total term. Next is credit score and credit utilization. We went over this already. It is a component that goes into their calculations and something to be considered. And then finally, monthly outgoings. So a big thing here is understanding what your monthly outgoings are. Let's say you have a car payment. Let's say you're paying down student debt. These are all things that are considered when taking a look at your application for a mortgage. So something that you should have in mind, let's say you're a couple months away from finishing off your payments, it might be worth waiting until you're done those payments so it doesn't come up in your loan application. Now, most lenders will consider if you identify that they do finish in the next couple months. That's something that they will consider as well. Sometimes it's going to feel like it's a black box, and to a certain extent, it is. So it doesn't. There's no necessary rhyme or reason why one lender will give you X and the other lender will give you Y. It's just their risk profiles. Some lenders specialize in certain aspects of the transaction or different profiles. So something to consider, and that's why working with a qualified mortgage advisor is important. In the end, it's important that you're extremely honest with your mortgage advisor. Don't kind of inflate your salary. Don't inflate your deposit because it'll only come back to hurt you in the process once you're starting to pay money. So as an example, if you think that inflating your salary and you actually don't get that value and you get an offer accepted for a property that's outside of the range that you could afford, the mortgage application, which you actually do post offer, will come back rejected because they will see that value in the end. So making sure that you're honest at the beginning is always super important and will be super useful for you to be communicating that with your buyer. Are there any other financing options? Yes. So I'll quickly go through these as they're sort of not the main topic of conversation for tonight, but they are, obviously very deep topics of conversation. So obviously there's Help to Buy. Help to Buy equity loan program or loan scheme is essentially for first-time buyers only. It's only on new build properties. And it's where if you live in London or you're buying one of the boroughs in London, it's up to 40% of the total value. If you're outside of London, it's up to 20%. And this is the value of the property. It's an equity loan, and the first 5 years, you do not pay any interest on that loan. After that, it starts at 1.75%, and then it increases on an annual basis. It's useful for getting your foot on the property ladder. It's obviously you need to be a first-time buyer. And if you're buying with somebody who's not a first-time buyer, you will not be eligible because both people within in the household who are purchasing need to be first-time buyers. So something to consider there. And then the other one is shared ownership. This is a great way to get your foot on the ladder as well. It's where you buy a portion of the home. It can be either new or existing builds. You can buy between 25 and 75% of the value. So this is a useful way to get your foot on the ladder. Now, when you're getting a deposit ready for a property that's shared ownership, you only need 5% of the value for which you're buying. So let's say you only buy 25% of the value of the property, then you will only need 5% of that 25%. So it allows you to actually get access to properties a little bit quicker from a deposit perspective. So something to consider there. The other thing here is the value that you don't own of the property. So let's say you buy 25% and you don't own the remainder 75%. You then have to pay rent on that value. You also have to pay a service charge, as all of the properties within the shared ownership scheme are leasehold properties. So something to consider. But both are good schemes depending on where you are and your position. So they're not right for everybody, but there is a scheme out there that might be right for you. Now, we write a lot about this in our blog, so you can see below. We actually had one of the administrators for Homes England write the ultimate guides for both shared ownership and equity loans. So if you are looking for that, check out our blog below, and you'll be able to see sort of a really, really detailed view of how to go about using one of these schemes. Now, we mentioned that there are some alternative financing options as well. So there are four main companies that have recently sprung up that you can consider. So the first one is Wayhome, similar to a shared ownership model, but there's no mortgage required. So you just put down a deposit, you pay rent on the remainder, you can staircase up. The other one is Propertunity. It's an equity loan model, similar to the equity loan model that was the Help to Buy structure. The difference here is that you pay interest on it from day one, but you are not limited to new builds. The next one is Generation Home. This is a new product where you are actually able to use friends and families to help you buy a new property. So it's kind of like a joint guarantor mortgage structure. They call it boosters. So something to look out for there. And then Tembo. Tembo is an equity release program. So you need to have somebody in your family who's willing to take out a Tembo equity release loan, which essentially you're allowed to then put into a property, which reduces the potential cost for you as it increases your deposit. Again, you need family support for this one. Great. So now we'll get into searching. And as with many of you, you've already saved up a lot of your deposit. Searching is probably top of mind. So let's do a quick poll on that. So what is the most important thing to you when searching for your new home? Location seems to be a big one. Wow, this is perfect for the show. Location, location, location. All right. Great. So 67% of you guys said location is the biggest thing. Very interesting. Obviously, with the big shifts that we've seen over the last 18 months, a lot more home working. This was super important before, so it still remains important, which is really good to know. So let's chat a little bit about searching for your property. So searching is a groundwork game. It is something that will take a bit of time, and that's something that you need to recognize right from the beginning. So there are a couple of things that you can do in order to set yourself up for success. Now, the first thing to do is get your finances in order. So making sure that you have all your documentation set up, making sure that you have your mortgage in principle, and then getting yourself ready for what you need to do ahead. Now, what ends up happening is you won't find something for a little while, and you'll be like, okay, there's nothing out there, and then all of a sudden, that perfect property will, come on the market, and it will happen very quickly. So you need to start thinking about things that you think are important. So doing your research is extremely important in advance. So looking for areas that have the prices you want, the schools that you're looking for, particular crime rates, potentially transport options. Making sure that you know sort of the areas that you're targeting in advance will help you in the future, and it'll also make your decisions a lot easier when a property does come up. As I mentioned, we can help you out here. We offer free area reports for all our Kettle members. So just request one of those. The next thing we'd say is just walk the neighborhoods and write down the names of the estate agents. So the way that estate agents work is they work based on patches. So an estate agent will focus on a particular area, and they might, only work in the southeast end of your town. And it's important to know which estate agents are working in those areas, because then you can go and approach them directly and let them know exactly what you are looking for. This can actually help in a couple of ways in potentially finding off market properties or finding properties before they're getting listed. Now, in a market that we've seen over the last 18 months, speed is of the essence for a lot of these purchases. So it's important that you are knowing what you want, and also being able to get out there and potentially get the edge on other buyers who are essentially your competitors. And then finally, it's prepare yourself to move quickly. As I mentioned before, that property, all of a sudden will pop up. Once you find the right place, it'll move very quickly, as the seller will want to, complete on a deal and get the transaction going. As I mentioned before, the transaction process or conveyancing is taking anywhere between 18 and 20 weeks right now. So people are very motivated to get that started. Now, how to find properties? Well, Kettle's a great way. We've now launched our curated search tools, so you can go on Kettle and check to see all the properties that are available. What we're doing is we are matching up your affordability with all of the properties that are available on the market. We do so in a fun way that's kind of like being able to swipe right on properties. So it's a lot of fun that way. You can also save the properties that you like. And then you can also request a valuation for these particular properties. So we'll then be able to turn that around. Valuation reports are very comprehensive. It'll give you a view of other properties in the area, both offered and sold. It'll give you a general rough estimation of what the value of that property is. And it gives you sort of an understanding of what some of the prices are from a lettings perspective. Not that that's important to you, but it gives you sort of a general idea of what's happening in the market. In addition to that, you can also request a pre-approval for a mortgage. So that's how you connect with your mortgage in principle. And you can also book a viewing. So it's quite useful on your mobile and something that you can use right now. Next thing, obviously, is setting alerts on Rightmove and Zoopla. They are the behemoths in the property market. These guys cover 98% of the total properties that are available on the market. So setting alerts on there was also super useful. Like I said before, call the estate agents in your areas. Let them know what you're looking for. Give them a little bit of context. And usually what they'll do is they'll put you in their database, and they'll also keep you top of mind. Obviously, if they can find a motivated buyer for properties that they think are right for you, they'll give you a call. And then in addition, drive the neighborhoods on a regular basis if you can, see if there's any boards that are popping up. And the boards are a common thing still. So just because people are listing properties online, that doesn't mean that they're not still actually putting boards up. It is a great way for estate agents to advertise that a property is available. And how long does it take? Well, how long is a piece of string? It can take anywhere between a few weeks and a few months. So don't get down on yourself if you haven't found the perfect property in the first couple weeks. It can take a little bit of time. It also gives you a little bit of time to rethink about what is core to you. So making sure that that is something that you know and is something that you are looking to achieve. Just make sure that you are taking your time, being patient, don't rush into it. It is going to be your biggest purchase of your life. Making an offer. So things to do before making an offer. So get your free area and valuation reports from Kettle. Make sure you have your mortgage in principle. Set a max price that you're willing to pay. This is really important when thinking about negotiations. If you don't set your max price, you can actually end up paying more than you would ever anticipate, and can put you in a difficult position, both from getting your mortgage completed, but also potentially putting yourself in a position where you didn't necessarily consider when paying that back. So always put a max price and a walkaway point, because if the price of the property is too much, it's not right for you. Ask the estate agents if there are any outstanding offers or if there are any offers that have fallen through. These are good indications on how competitive the market is, and it's also a good indication on if there are issues with the property potentially. If there's been an offer that has fallen through, check out or ask the agent why that is the case. They should have an answer, and if they don't, that's a bit of a red flag. Remember, almost all offers are non-binding. Unless you sign anything that's in addition to it, all offers are non-binding. And it's not until exchange where you are actually committed to the property. So something to keep in mind. Now, because you're a first-time buyer, you can actually leverage this, and you are very attractive to most sellers. So make sure that you let them know that you're chain-free. So that's super useful. You end the chain and can be useful for the seller. That you're ready to buy. So obviously, the estate agent is motivated to sell a property. So making sure that you are letting them know that's the case. If you're able to be fast and potentially flexible on dates, that can be really motivating to the seller. Sometimes the seller, is moving abroad or something like that, and they have particular dates that they need to hit. That can be super motivating and can save them thousands of pounds, which might actually translate in savings for you. And then actually, this is something that we've seen over the years actually work in our first-time buyers' favors, and that is writing a bio. It's actually quite useful because selling your property is an emotional thing. And as a seller, if you know that the buyer is going to come and love the property the same way that you did, maybe raise kids or whatever it is, this is something that they'll take into consideration. Not everybody is motivated by the top pound. So make sure that you are able to provide a good view on sort of your background and your motivation for wanting to buy the property. It can be very helpful long term. Now, we always get questions from users asking like, how often should they be buying, or sorry, should they be viewing the property prior to actually making an offer? Now, our suggestion is essentially see the property once to fall in love with it, see the property twice to stay in love. And the reason why we say that is because you should be looking out for a couple things. So we have a complete list available for you that will give you a good view on what you should keep an eye out for. But the major things are like, look for damp. That's a big thing. Look at the ceilings, the walls, the floors for any signs of leaks. Walk around the outside of the property, see if you can see anything from foundational cracks or if the roof needs to be redone. These are all really good things to give you an indicator of how well the property is being kept and the quality of property. Then in addition to that, take a walk around the neighborhood. Make sure that this is a place that you want to live. Remember, like you got to kind of put yourself in that situation and know that you're going to be there for, 5, 6, 10, 20 years. So make sure that you really like it prior to putting down that offer. And just also know that in the end, you can miss a couple things. You're not a surveyor, so that's why you do get a survey. So, just try to keep an eye on some of these things. If you miss them, it's not a problem. That's why you get a survey, but you can also flag things in advance that may make you, think twice about making the offer. So it's good to kind of keep in mind of that. And then how do you make an offer? Well, you agree your price using data. Now, this is a big one. We always say that pricing a property is about 85% data and 15% emotion. Now, just be conscious of that. There are certain things that you're going to love about a particular property and you're going to feel like you want to pay more for. Now, if you're okay with that, that's fine. But just make sure that you're picking a price and it's within your budget. And we always sort of recommend not picking your sort of best and final right out the gate. It's likely that the seller is going to come back and try to negotiate with you. Next thing is don't be afraid to go lower than asking. In this market, it's been a bit competitive as of late. So something to keep in mind, there may be bidding wars happening, but we're starting to see that tail off. Since the stamp duty holiday has come to an end at the end of June, we've seen that kind of tail off. So it's actually going to become more of a buyer's market, we anticipate, over the next 6 to 12 months. So we're hoping to see first-time buyers be able to get back into the market now that home movers have kind of settled down. Next thing is you write an email. You can get that template off Kettel as well. Don't forget your bio. This email will essentially outline the price and any of your terms that you want or conditions that you want included in the contract. And this is something that you can email to the estate agent. when you're making an offer, you always make the offer to the estate agent and not to the actual seller. And then finally, let the estate agent know that you're actually seeing other properties. Even if that's not the case, giving them a bit of motivation to push their seller to give you an answer and not to keep the property sort of languishing on the market, it can work in your advantage. Now, if you end up, finding a property or looking at other properties that you like, great. If you don't, worst comes to worst, you waited a little bit for that. But giving a little bit of, a sense of scarcity or motivation can always help you in your negotiations. So now you've had your offer accepted. Congratulations. So what happens? Well, you tell your mortgage advisor that your offers has been accepted and at what price. They then start the application process for your mortgage. As we mentioned before, you have a mortgage in principle. You don't actually have an agreed mortgage. So they'll actually be taking a lot of the documentation that you'll be providing them. So that's pay slips, bank statements, proof of funds. You'll have to be giving them probably your contracts for your work. If you're self-employed, you have to give them some of your accounts, and we can provide you all that information as it's something that we have hosted on Kettel as well. In addition to that, they will then organize to get a mortgage valuation for your property. So what happens here is the lender will be requesting a valuation on the property to make sure that the value that you're offering on the property matches up with the value that they're willing to lend you. So in the very rare situation where they were having to foreclose on the property, they want to know that they are able to sell the property and recoup the value for which they're lending. So there are rare situations where the lender will say, okay, you've offered X, we think it's slightly below X. What happens there is you either have to increase your deposit to cover that delta, you can check with another lender, or you can try to negotiate with the seller to reduce the value or potentially walk away. So there are a couple options for you, but it's something that does happen in rare occasions. We haven't talked too much today about the buying a property that's a new build. And that again it's kind of a separate discussion. It walks along a lot of the similar lines, but this happens more with new builds than it does with existing properties. So something to keep in mind. And then in addition to that, it's time to instruct your solicitor or conveyancer for the conveyancing process. So what you'll get here is a letter of engagement, which outlines sort of the details of the process. You'll have to fill in their client information form so they can get a lot of details about you for their various checks that they need to do. Then they'll give you sort of the terms and conditions of working with them. They'll run you through their anti-money laundering and your politically exposed persons checks. So these are important for them when it comes to their know your customer information. So if you can get your documents kind of piled together in advance, this will help you from a speed perspective. Then they'll also be doing your stamp duty form. Stamp duty is a value for which you have to pay if you are over the threshold. So as a first-time buyer, as we mentioned, there was a stamp duty holiday. First-time buyers benefited by the stamp duty holiday, but actually first-time buyers continue to benefit in that you have up to £300,000 available in stamp duty free value, which you can use, which is super useful, which is much greater than the 125K that you would otherwise have as a home mover. So make sure that you're taking advantage of that, and your conveyancer will see if that's the case. And that's for properties under £500,000. If you go over £500,000, which some people do in the London area, you do not benefit from that stamp duty relief. So something to keep in mind. And then finally, you'll put your solicitor in funds, and that's for searches. And then you'll organize your survey. And we'll get to that in a second. All right, quick time check. So we've got 15 minutes left. We'll cruise through this conveyancing. The conveyancing is quite a meaty component. So we have a couple things that we can help you with if you want to book a one-to-one with us. We also have an infographic that you can grab off the site. So something that will give you a visual representation. But we'll go through the conveyancing, and if you have any questions, just put them in the chat. So what is conveyancing? It is the legal process required to purchase your home. It can be done by either a solicitor or conveyancer, and as mentioned, it's taken between 18 to 20 weeks and should be down to 14 to 16 soon. So what are the major components? So start off the beginning. So it's instructing your solicitor and making sure that you're letting the estate agent know who your solicitor is. They will put the two solicitors in contact. Solicitor will then organize your searches. So what searches are essentially the three main ones are local authority, environmental, water and drainage. And these are checks to make sure that the property has sort of proper zoning. It has proper environmental. It's not built on a dump. It has a good understanding of who owns the drains and pipes in the area, and making sure that it is connected all correctly. So these are searches that are done. Now the big one that is taking more time, and this is something to be to know about, is essentially that the local authority search. So depending on your council, the speed of this search will range anywhere from a few days, so 5 business days, up until multiple weeks. So as an example, if you're buying in the council of Hackney or in the borough of Hackney, it is taking months. So they've done some things where you actually get an indemnity versus doing the searches, but it can vary. Now, if you have any questions about searches, we can help you. We also have a tool where we can view roughly how long searches are taking based on the council. So just shoot us a note and we'll be happy to help you there. From there, your solicitor will receive the legal packs from the seller and the seller solicitor and raise any questions. Now, this is essentially all the information about the property, including the title deeds and stuff like that. It'll confirm legal ownership and approvals for any extensions that they might have done. You'll then get your mortgage offer received by your lender, and that's when your solicitor will also start to do the work where they will pull on your help to buy ISA or your lifetime ISA. They'll then organize your exchange date. This is where you'll pay your deposits, and this is where you sign the purchase contract. So this is actually the first time you are contractually obliged to the property. If you back out after this, you will lose your deposit and you are potentially liable from the seller for any damages. So something to be very aware of, and your conveyancer will make this very clear to you. This is also when you'll agree to a completion date. Next, your solicitor will receive the funds from your lender. They'll prepare to transfer those funds to the seller solicitor, who then passes most of it probably off to their mortgage provider, and then the remainder to the seller themselves. The solicitor that you use will actually always touch the funds. You never get access to the mortgage value. So it always goes from the lender to the solicitor to the other solicitor, and then over to the seller. So you actually have no point where you're touching those, and that's including your lifetime ISA value or your help to buy value. They'll then organize completion day. So this is where your solicitor finally transfers the funds. They'll confirm the purchase, and they'll all get on the phone and they'll all agree. And then from there, the estate agent is the person who's giving you your keys. Now, we always get questions about completion day. When should I expect my keys? For the most part, you get them in the late afternoon. That's generally how it works. Now, if you're in a chain, it can be even sort of early evening, but that's something to speak to your solicitor about. They'll have a good view on sort of how big the chain is and what the likelihood is of completing early. But don't worry, if you don't have your keys by noon, it's not a big deal. More common to get them sort of late afternoon, early evening. And then finally, your solicitor will be completing all the closing documents, and this includes registering the title and processing any of your stamp duty and payments there as well. So some follow-up documents that they'll do post-completion. So we have this nice little infographic, as I mentioned before. It gives you sort of a general view of what you should expect by the days. I mean, don't hold it to gospel, as each conveyancing process is slightly different. So it just kind of gives you a general view. Again, you can get access to this on Kettel. Next up is surveys. What is a survey? A survey is an independent review of a house done by a surveyor who's qualified by the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, or also known as RICS. Why should you get one? Purchasing a house is done at a let a buyer beware, or caveat emptor if you're into Latin, basis. Now, what this essentially means is it's up to you to figure out if the property is of the quality that you expect and you want. Now, this is where a surveyor comes in. They are a qualified individual who also has a professional indemnity insurance to back them up and say that they are able to determine if a property has issues in it, and it's very useful for you from a point of view of understanding if you're buying a good quality property and to give you peace of mind. So we think that surveys are very important for any properties over 10 years. Most properties who are under 10 years will have some sort of builder's warranties still available to them. So any new builds obviously do not need a survey. That being said, you can still get them. It's up to you. Or any properties with additional renovations, even if they're under 10 years. This could end up saving you thousands in the long run. So what kind of surveys are there? So RICS as an institution provides sort of three levels of surveys that are sort of advised. The first one is a condition report, or level one. This is a very basic report. We actually, we shy away from this. We think that if you're going to get a survey, a level two home buyer's report is probably where you want to start. So any properties older than 10 years, up to roughly about 50 years old, and have no real extensions done on the properties. Now, your surveyor will be the one who will dictate which survey is best for you. Take their recommendations. If they tell you that a home buyer's report is not satisfactory for you, they're doing so because they believe that your property needs a bit more investigation. If you take the wrong survey and you go against the advice, it's possible that they aren't able to see the stuff that they think they should be able to see because of the in-depthness of the report. So always take your surveyor's advice. As I mentioned, home buyer's report, it's more comprehensive. It will give you defect and repair analysis, and this can be useful if something comes up. Let's say a boiler is condemned or something like that. You can go to the seller and say, well, you expected that the boiler was going to work. It no longer does. A boiler is £6,000. I want to reduce the price I'm going to pay for this property by £6,000. Now, that might not always work, but it is a way that you can stand by a request for a reduction in price. And you can say, this report, which is done by a RIC surveyor, has identified this issue. So that is helpful. And then finally, the building survey, which is level 3, most comprehensive. Again, properties older than 50 years or extensive renovations, both will provide you a defect and repair analysis, and they'll give you a good view on potentially what it will cost you. And as we discussed, can this affect your price? Yes, it can. There are two things that could happen here. There's three things that could happen. Your report could come back, everything's great, fantastic. Your report could come back and there's something that's amiss that you were unaware of, but that the surveyor caught. Okay, great. You can then either negotiate with the seller. You can either just say, okay, fine, that's something that we're kind of going to live with, or potentially you can pull out altogether. So that is useful to know. Now getting to the final one, what insurance do you need when you're buying your home? You need buildings insurance, and this is for the rebuild of the property. So let's say you were to buy a £100,000 house. The rebuild of the property might only be 30 grand. And the reason why that is because what they're costing here is essentially how much does it cost to make that property again, not to buy it, because the land value is also included in that 100 grand that you just spent. So they will just do it for the rebuild cost. You need contents insurance. This is an optional insurance. You don't need it, but it's up to you, as it'll insure all your contents. Again, another optional insurance, life insurance. say, were to pass away, making sure that your loved ones are in a position to either pay off the mortgage or do something with it. And then in addition to that, there's mortgage payment protection insurance. So this is insurance if you are injured or you are unable to work, they can cover your mortgage payments for the duration of that period. When do you get it? Well, the insurance that you absolutely need is your building insurance. You almost always need this, and this is usually a stipulation from your mortgage. So you need to get this actually at exchange, which is interesting because you don't have keys at exchange, but you still need to insure the property, because if you exchange on a property and it burns down the next day and you don't have buildings insurance, that is your problem. So make sure that you are getting buildings insurance for the day of exchange. Where do you get it? You can purchase it through your mortgage advisor or online. There are plenty of providers online that will do this as well. And that is it. That takes you all the way through to, from dreams to keys. It is a very whirlwind kind of speed through of the purchase process. And I appreciate that there are some things that we did not touch on. We didn't deep dive into too many things. So I appreciate you might have questions about that. Now, again, as I mentioned before, Kettel has a one-to-one home buyer guidance, Kettel expert calls that you can do. When you log on, you'll see it in the bottom footer. It'll say call. You can schedule a call with one of our guides at that time, and you might even get me. So fantastic. So let's take a quick look at the questions here. So I'll stop sharing my screen. All right. So, quick question. Is this going to be recorded for viewing later? Yes, that's correct. I will share this information with other people, and it will be a YouTube link. Does anybody have any questions? You can type them into the question box, which is just on your lower part of your screen. Feel free to type them there. The other question is, will the Zoom meeting video be saved on the website? So we won't save it on the website. Like I said, it will be on YouTube. What I'll do is I will share it with everybody who has registered for the webinar. All right, if there's no other questions, I do actually have one more poll, which would be super useful for us. Just feedback. So I'll just launch this poll. Oh, we got a couple questions. Good. So I'll leave that poll up. Victoria, what is the stamp duty threshold for first-time buyers in London? So there are no differences based on locations for stamp duty. The stamp duty is based on the value of the property. So as a first-time buyer, you do not have to pay stamp duty up to 300,000, and then you pay 5% between 300 and 500,000. So if your property is 501,000 pounds, you actually don't benefit from any of that stamp duty relief. So something to keep in mind. When purchasing a property, do they look at how much you have earned over the years? So Stephanie, what they look at is what you're currently earning. And the reason why is because they want to know that you are able to pay off the loan over the coming years. So historically, if you've earned £1 million and now you make 25,000 pounds, they don't really care that you made £1 million historically, because it doesn't help them in understanding what you can afford in the future. So what they'll be thinking of is what your contract says today. Vicky, if you earn over a certain amount, would you not be eligible for Help to Buy? So Help to Buy, you are eligible for. You are not eligible for shared ownership. So shared ownership is capped at 90K in London for the household and 80K outside of London. Now the caps for Help to Buy happen on the property price side. So in London, you can buy a property up to £600,000. In other areas, it depends. Check out the Ultimate Guide. It will give you a breakdown of exactly what it is the caps are based on the areas for which you live in. So it's important to know that prior to looking at the Help to Buy. Anonymous, is it true that lenders will only lend you 3 times your annual salary? So the rule of thumb is 4.5 times. We are seeing some lenders lending up to 5.5 times, but 4.5 is the rule of thumb. Now, that being said, it really does depend on your application. So if you have a lot of monthly outgoings and there are commitments that you have for years to come, let's say you did a master's degree in the US and you have a lot of student debt or something like that, that can impact your multiplier of your income. So it's best to speak to a qualified mortgage advisor. As I mentioned, we can help you connect with one through Kettel, and they will get you an understanding of what you can actually borrow. But 4.5 times is the rule of thumb. Joanna, how do you find a solicitor for conveyancing? So we can actually help you connect with a solicitor. We have multiple well-vetted solicitors who we work with on a regular basis. If not through us, then it's really about finding people that you've either your friends or family that have used a solicitor and getting their personal sort of opinion on them. Now, as I mentioned, we are connected with a bunch of these partners. How we make our money, and we're very transparent about this. It's on the homepage. We do make a referral fee from any of the solicitor, mortgage brokers, or surveyors that we share your details with. So we're very open about that, and we think it's important that everybody has a transparent view of that. Can I use my LISA on old properties or only new builds like the Help to Buy? Nope, you can use your lifetime LISA on existing build properties. How much would you say one should save for the mortgage fees? Very good question. A common question that we have actually. So we recommend saving between £2,500 and £2,800 for your conveyancing fees, and your survey. That's generally what we recommend saving. So something to keep in mind. If you use the Help to Buy ISA to buy a house over 300,000, do you not get the bonus? That's correct. So you need to buy within the value of that property cap. The lifetime ISA is 450,000. So as more people get the lifetime ISA, as it's the only one available now, it's 450,000. Monique, will there be an in-depth talk on how to do Help to Buy schemes, shared ownership, or can we provide where I can get more info? Yes, Monique, you can check out our ultimate guides, which is at blog.kettel.io/blog. We have both the ultimate guides for the shared ownership and the Help to Buy equity loan scheme. They are super in-depth. They're the most in-depth, I would say, that are available. And again, they were written by people who actually run these schemes. So it'll give you a step-by-step process, and they're super useful, but they are a lot of content. Victoria, where can I find the flow chart of the first-time buyer's journey? Show us. Victoria, I will send you it via email. And take a note. I'll send you that by email, Victoria. And then it looks like our final question for the evening, is your mortgage deposit considered your first payment, or would you be expected to pay your monthly repayment as well? I think what you're asking is like, when are you paying your first monthly repayment? So your deposit goes in at the point of exchange. The rest is paid at the completion date, and then you will have a repayment schedule which is designed by your lender, and they will identify that first repayment. The deposit is not considered a repayment. Okay, we got two more, and then we will cut it off. Oh, just one more, it looks like. All right, Shauna. The money I have saved with my LISA, do I include that within my deposit, or does it get deducted from the total amount of the house? It'll get deducted from the total amount of the house. Now, your solicitor will be using that value, but it is deducted from the total amount of your house, but you can use it as your deposit. That's right. Your solicitor will be extracting that value. So it can be used as your deposit. It is a function of your savings, and that is used for your deposit. Great. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining this evening. We hope it was useful for you. As mentioned, we will save this recording and share it to everybody online. We'll be using YouTube as the way to do that. If you have any other questions, feel free to book one-on-one Kettle Guide calls with us, and we will be able to sort out any of your questions. In addition to that, hopefully you find the platform useful. We always love feedback, so please, if you have any feedback, you can email me directly at trevor@kettel.io, and any of your feedback was obviously greatly useful, and we'll pile that back into the platform. Happy house hunting.